We are going to start the webinar, and we will, hoping that folks will continue to join us as we go along. The first thing I'm going to ask everyone is to mute themselves. So if you look at the bottom left corner of your Zoom page, you will see a mute button. If everyone could mute themselves, that would be awesome. Thank you all so much. Welcome again to the ListeningWorks Communicating Across Differences webinar. We are so excited that you have decided to join us tonight.
Yep. So before we get started, I just wanted to remind us of our goals tonight. So we're here to provide the Indivisible Network welcome and overview of ListeningWorks project, which is a project of Youth on Board. And for participants to get an in-depth exposure and experience with action and support model, the model that grounds ListeningWorks in our theory. Because this is a short webinar, this training could be for a couple days. We're going to shorten what we normally teach in a training in this webinar. And tonight we'll focus on the support. The support aspect we'll focus on tonight is listening partnerships. And then the action piece that we'll focus on tonight as part of our model is the deep canvassing piece. So just a housekeeping reminder that you're being recorded and that you can turn off video if you need to do something else that you don't want to be live. Otherwise, we encourage you to keep your video on so we can see who's on. You'll see why it makes sense later as we progress during the webinar. And then you can click stop video on the bottom left screen if you haven't been able to find where you can turn off your video if you need it. But otherwise, please stay on with us.
And it looks like most of you have found the chat box as well. If you have any questions or want to say hello, there's a chat box down at the bottom for you to ask any questions as we progress along. And we will have plenty of opportunity for Q&A. So we're going to get started telling you a little bit about who we are before we dive in.
So I'm Estaniola. You'll hear Carlos referring to me as Esty, so I'm Esty. And I just wanted to speak a little bit about how I got into organizing, and particularly around support and healing in organizing. And so if you look on the left-hand side, you see me as a baby with my father, who was a Haitian immigrant, as well as my mom. And why I put that picture up there is because I learned from a very young age that being an immigrant in this country, didn't matter how long you were here, there were injustices that you faced, and it was hard to navigate this country. And so as a child of immigrant, I always had a huge sense of what is right and what is wrong, and carry that with me in every space, including organizing. And the healing part came into play when I lost my father. And I didn't realize that not being able to process losing him, I was bringing all that negative energy into spaces such as organizing as a young person, and it was making me not as effective as an organizer. And it was through Youth on Board that I was able to learn the action and support model and realize, like, oh, organizing is mostly effective if you figure out how to support yourself, and therefore can figure out to support community. So that's a little bit about me. I currently work at Youth on Board with Carlos as project manager of ListeningWorks. And yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. And my name is Carlos, and I was born in Colombia. To the left, you can see a picture of me as a little baby and my mother. We were at the Medellin Zoo in that picture, and that was 2 years before we moved to the United States. And I did not know at the time that we would be moving to the United States as one of more than 12 million undocumented immigrants that are in this country, as mothers, as fathers, as students, and as workers. I grew up as an undocumented immigrant in Boston, and really quickly learned about the differences between people like me and my peers who were citizens, whose parents had gone to college in this country, whose parents had had opportunity. And when I made it to high school, I decided that part of my job was to give back and to try to change the injustices that I was seeing around me and that were impacting me. And so I joined Youth on Board, their youth program, to fight for education justice. And I also fought to change my own status as a dreamer. And I joined the immigrant rights movement as a dreamer to try to pass the DREAM Act and to pass DACA. And along the way, I realized one important lesson, thanks to Youth on Board, which is you can't possibly get very far in trying to fight injustice, in trying to make the world a better place, if you're not healing, if you're not taking the space and the time to actually cry and laugh and rage about all the things that have happened to all of us. I learned that when I had an incredible cry that made all the difference. I could see things clearer, things were brighter, and I said, there's something here. So we've launched ListeningWorks as a way to share with people how we've figured out two things: supporting each other and healing as a way to then be more effective in communicating across differences. And that's especially important in the current political climate. But before we talk a little bit about ListeningWorks, Essie's going to talk a little bit about Youth on Board.
Yeah, so Youth on Board, which is a project of Youth Build USA, is a youth-led, adult-supported organization that was founded in 1994. And we started off as literally getting young people on boards that govern their lives, particularly in education. And then that work kind of expanded towards how do we actually make sure that young people are the focal point or centered in anything that governs their life, whether it be education, whether it's issues like climate change, school to prison pipeline, et cetera. And we realized early on that young people are lovely, lovely people, but they bring, their lives with them in organizing spaces, as do anyone, right? School, things that are going on at home, they were fighting each other. We all know about internal fighting. We all know about burnout and things like that. And so our director, who has a huge background in peer counseling, social emotional learning, and restorative justice, realized that we need to create some kind of model that allowed internal support to happen so that we could do our work more effectively in the community. And so we created something called the Action and Support Model, and how it works in Youth on Board through our youth organizing branch, which is called the Boston Student Advisory Council, which in Boston. We do bi-weekly support groups where young people get to come and really learn how to listen to each other intentionally and create safe space for people to talk about what they're going through, or to talk about what they're, nothing that's, it doesn't have to necessarily be negative. It could be, things that are going on that's great, just a chance to be heard. And what we found was that it made our work more effective, we're more resilient, and informed our ability to organize. And much of our success have a lot to do with the fact that we are able to listen to communities and pull people in and meet them where they're at. And so it was the action and support model that was built in Youth on Board that serves as the foundation as ListeningWorks, particularly in the political climate that we're in.
And out of that comes ListeningWorks. I think, like many of you all, when President Trump was elected into office in 2016, we cried a lot. And then we called each other and we said, we have to do something about this. And we weren't sure exactly what we wanted to do, but what we did know was that we had a tool that could potentially help organizations, movement builders, and community leaders actually have some support while they lead the resistance. And not just support for themselves, but also then learn how to bring support out into their communities. I think all of you are engaged in the work of bringing important issues to the top of the agenda in the communities that you're in and that you're working in, and that isn't easy. And more often than not, we run into people who don't think like us, who don't agree with us, who question how we think. And I think in this current political climate, it's more important now than ever to know how to engage someone who doesn't think like you, who is from a different community than you are. I think not engaging enough perspectives effectively is one of the main reasons why we are in the political situation that we're in. And so we launched ListeningWorks as a national project to train community organizers and movement builders on our action and support model, which again equips people to not only learn how to bring support back into their organizations, their groups, and their teams, but then trains them on how to bring these tools out into the communities that they're working in. And so today's agenda will walk you through two tools that we think are effective in accomplishing that. And hopefully by the end of the webinar, you'll have a better sense of what it looks like to take on engaging people across differences. And hopefully you walk away with some excitement for doing that.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's poll time. It's polling time. We wanted to introduce you to some statements and see what you guys think about each one of them, and then we'll explain how that statement connects to the work that we do with ListeningWorks, particularly our action support model. So if you could just take a moment and say whether you agree or disagree, sorry, there is no middle, you have to choose, for the following statements: all people are good, all people get hurt, all people can heal. And please express whether or not you agree or disagree for each statement. We'll keep it up for about 30 seconds and then. Yeah,
Should we?
Okay. All right, everybody all set?
Lawrence, do you agree or disagree with the statement? All people are good. Agree or disagree?
All right, are the results ready?
Can she show the results?
Results are ready?
Oh, I see. Okay, we are getting pictures. We are getting pictures of the results. And we're seeing that, all of you are split right down the middle on question number 1. All people are good, 50 to 50. Mm-hmm. On the question of all people get hurt, all of you agree that all people get hurt. Mm-hmm. And on the question of all people can heal, all of you agree that all people can heal. That is a really interesting result.
We always get interesting results every time we do this. So, oh, awesome, it just popped up, great.
That's great.
So our perspective, so what really grounds our action support model around ListeningWorks, our perspective that we hold out, and by hold out, I mean we grapple with this ourselves. We hold out that all people are good, all people get hurt, and all people can heal. I think many of you would not disagree that when you look at a newborn baby, it's hard to imagine that that little baby, has a shred of evil in them. It might be some of you who think so, but it's hard to imagine. And we hold out for people to grapple that people were born into this world inherently good. And how they've gotten hurt is we live in oppressive societies. People weren't there for us when we needed them. Fundamental human needs weren't fulfilled. And that shapes the behaviors of people and how they exist as children and eventually as adults. That does not necessarily mean that we don't hold people accountable for how they act out their hurts to other people. But we like to think that beneath all the hurt, people are good. All people are good. And I like to say out there that even includes the person right at the top of this country, our president. So we hold that out. And it's okay if you still disagree, but it's going to be really important for you to at least grapple with this statement as we progress through this webinar. And so I wanted to dive a little bit deeply into what we think about hurt. Hurt is complex. There are many ways that people get hurt, but what we found in our experience in organizing, particularly with young people, is that when we got a chance to listen to them, and we also use the tool of action and support as well, and so this is from our own experience, is that we often find that the hurt or the baggage that they brought into organizing space had a lot to do where needs that were fundamental to human beings didn't get met. Whether it was basic needs like shelter, food, or it was, human needs around love, affection, play, wanting to feel heard, wanting to feel significant. And when our young people didn't get that, or ourselves, we were young people at some point, didn't get that, we grew up into adults that were in desperate need of that, and wanted to be satisfied in some way around a human need. And got really disappointed if that didn't happen. And so we found that when human beings haven't had needs met, that can manifest itself into triggers, right? How many of you guys have had a conversation in organizing with someone who rubbed you the wrong way, but you didn't necessarily know why? Or you wanted to, how many of you guys have blocked people on Facebook ever since Trump got elected because of their views? you know, so and I wonder to what extent it's because you were triggered by something that they said or did, and you couldn't hold out that maybe what they were reacting to or what they were saying had a lot more to do with hurts that they were carrying and packaging into this harmful way, more so than it being something that's inherently true of them. And we hold that out for you as well. So we all bring our past into the present, and that's okay because we're human. But what we're after is, how do we heal from that? How do we become aware of that so that we don't allow ourselves to see present day through the lens of our past hurts? Because if you can't see past that, then it's very easy for you to write off people. It's very easy to not believe that there's a shred of goodness in them or yourself. And it breaks down communication and your ability to connect with people. And so that's, in a short sense, what we mean by all people are good, all people get hurt, all people can heal, and why we try to grapple and hold that perspective as the foundation of listening work so that we can communicate across differences.
Great. Now, everyone talks about healing. I think these days, healing is like the most talked about buzzword in our movements. We need healing. We need healing. And there's so many different ideas for what healing actually means. This is why we're saying it's really important that we do focus on healing, because it will allow you to heal from the hurt that gets in the way of communicating with people who might not think like you. And what do we actually mean by healing? Well, in our years of practice in peer counseling, in restorative justice practices, and in social emotional learning practices with young people, what we have found works for healing is really the simple but revolutionary act of meaningful listening. That is, like, offering meaningful and mutual listening to people allows them to heal, meaning allows them to the space to reflect on the hurts and the triggers that have left all of us incapable of seeing the present reality of communicating with all kinds of people and remembering our goodness and everyone else's goodness. And so when we engage in effective, meaningful, and mutual listening, that allows us to heal so that we can connect with one another. We're not just talking about connecting with people on the other side of the political aisle. How many of us struggle with connecting with people who are even on our side of the political aisle? How many divisions within our groups do we see even today? Meaningful listening allows us to heal so that we can build the kinds of relationships we're going to need to build in order to make change in this world. So you're on a webinar about communicating across differences, and yet half of this webinar will be focused on meaningful listening and healing, because that is, from our perspective, the most effective way to do that.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about the support aspect of our action and support model. Again, this webinar is very short, and so there are so many tools that we have around support. But I wanted to introduce you into what grounds our action and support model is listening. Meaningful, mutual listening. And so what do we mean by listening? We mean that when you're listening to someone, whether it's your own colleague in your organization or somebody at the door that you're trying to canvas to, or whatever it is, listening entails giving full, warm attention to that person. I'm sure many of us have been in conversations where we thought that person was listening and their eyes are looking elsewhere, they're making faces, or maybe you were that person. And so we just wanted to be clear that guidelines for listening consist of giving full, warm attention. And then when we're also listening to someone, we need to remember the goodness of the person. Even if you can't think that they're inherently good, could you at least think that in that moment, there's a shred of goodness in them? And why that is the case is because it's hard to listen to someone if you can't even hold out the best of their humanity. And so we try to remember the goodness of anybody when we are listening. When we also do listening, we avoid offering advice. Not saying it's a terrible idea, but we've all been in situations where you just wanted to be heard, and instead of feeling heard, someone cut you off and just decided to say, let me help you fix your life. And that's not necessarily what you were looking for. Or maybe you are on the opposite end. So we try to avoid offering advice and instead offer directions to people. You know, somebody's sharing, you know, we ask probing questions, not because we're nosy, but because we want them to share from a deep place and feel comfortable doing so. We also keep strict confidentiality when we do listening as part of our action and support model, because we want people to feel like they can share whatever they want and not be spread. And then we always allow emotional release. And we found that really effective when we're working with our young people, that whatever emotion they want to show, let them show it, whether it's crying, laughter, rage, whatever it was. And what we found is when people got a chance to show that, they generally felt better and could think better about people, themselves, and the work that they were doing. So those are our guidelines for listening. Do you have anything else to add? Cool. So the foundation of our action and support model when it comes to the support piece is something we call listening partnerships. And it's an intentional tool that we use that allows for two people to take time and really hear themselves out. And yes, we structured it because we find that we live in a society that doesn't allow for much listening. And people really want to talk over each other. So we structured it so that everyone could feel heard, mutually heard in a listening partnership. So when we set up a listening partnership, which is a tool that we use within our organization to support our members and use outside our organization to support the community, we got to make sure that we get comfortable. Nobody wants to listen or be listened to if, you know, hectic things are going around, right? And then we determine turns for a speaker and a listener. So if it was Carlos and myself, he would be the speaker, and I would be the listener listening to him. And we share equal time. And why we emphasize equal time, so like if we only had 10 minutes, I'd listen to him for 5 minutes, then we would switch and he would listen to me for 5 minutes. And we emphasize equal time, particularly in setups where we have oppressed groups and an oppressor, so him being a man, me being a woman, an adult with a young person, a white person with a person of color. We want to emphasize equal time because oftentimes those who are in oppressed groups get talked over a lot or have internalized messages around what it means to be their identity and don't speak up enough. And so we allow for equal time so everybody feels heard. And then when we get into the listening partnerships, we encourage that the person listening listen warmly, actually look like they're invested in what they are hearing and the person. And if the person who's being listened to speaks from the heart. So in organizing spaces, you know, oftentimes we like to talk about the work that we're doing or the next campaign or whatever it is. We actually encourage organizers to speak from the heart and practice radical vulnerability. Can you bring into the space things that are actually going on in your life that don't necessarily have to do with the work? Can you trust your organizer, your colleague enough, you know, to share a little bit more deeply? Because we always want to pitch what our next project is. And then after we're done with the listening partnership, we offer grounding. We recognize that if somebody shares deeply, especially if they're talking about things that are from their past, it can be a little hard to get back into the present moment and go on to the next thing that they have to do. So a grounding question is a random question. It can be, do you like chocolate cake or vanilla cake? Do you like space or earth? You know, random questions that allow people to get back into the present so that they, in turn, can now listen to somebody else. Anything else on that?
Absolutely. The value of listening partnerships in our organization and in our lives has been immeasurable. I don't think that we would be able to do the work that we do the way we do it without setting intentional time aside to listen to each other and to offer the meaningful listening we all need to actually heal from the things that have happened to us so that we can be more effective and better organizers. Esty and I regularly practice listening partnerships, whether it's to start the morning off because one of us feels sluggish or something had happened the night before. We have weekly times where we sometimes do 20, 25, 30 minutes each. And some people can do even longer. And we do it after a big event.
Before a big event?
Before a big event. If we weren't so tired after this webinar, we'd probably do a listening partnership after this webinar. You can use it in many different ways, and it's going to become increasingly important that we as organizers get creative about creating these spaces in our organizations. Because people come to our organizations, yes, for the politics, yes, for the work that we're doing, but mostly people come because of the relationships that are built. And listening partnerships are an excellent way to help people feel cared about, feel listened to, and actually build relationships.
I did want to say one last thing and emphasize that, again, as organizers, we're so used to being burned out. We're so used to, having fights with our own people, let alone people who are not necessarily like us or that we're trying to convince to, hop onto our next political agenda. And it's tiring. And we can't stress enough that you cannot go out into communities, especially communities that you want to reach, who are not necessarily like you, or maybe who are, and you just want to build your base more, if you haven't figured out how to support yourself. And that's one thing that I really learned from organizing. I'm not effective unless I figure out how to have support around myself and the people that I organize with, so that I can then be an effective organizer. And the listening partnership allows for that. And you can be creative as to how you use it. We use it often to start a meeting. It's however you want to use it. So wanted to get into us trying it. And so that's why we were asking folks to have their video cameras on so you could see what people are on, and we could try doing it virtually. We understand there are limitations and awkwardness when it comes to being virtual, but in our training that was in person, we would certainly try it. So the question we wanted you guys to explore in the listening partnership, which we'll get into in a moment, is which perspective are you still grappling with? Where does it hit you personally why you don't believe, for instance, that all people are good? Or maybe you don't believe, for instance, that all people are hurt, or maybe you do, So why, we want you, it's a direction. You can use a listening partnership however you want, but I just ask that you just keep the following in mind. Remember that good listening, you're giving full warm attention, you're avoiding offering advice, you are primarily listening to the person who's speaking, you're keeping confidentiality. We don't want to come back and hear what you talked about unless it's about debriefing. Keep it to yourselves, and you're allowing emotional release. And we understand it's virtual, so that might be hard, but I just wanted to remind you of the listening guidelines. And then in the listening partnership, again, about how it's structured, when we break you guys out into pairs, we have Margaret from Indivisible who's working in the background pairing people up. Determine terms. So if it's you, Lawrence, going with Francis, and maybe you'll be the speaker and Francis be the listener, and then you share equal time. We'll tell you how much time you guys have to be listened to, and then you'll switch. And then the person who was listening will get to be the speaker, and the speaker gets to be the listener. Please be mindful that when you're switching, that you're offering grounding, because you want that person to have their mind clear to listen to you. So offer them grounding so that they can be present to listen to you. So ask them a random question, A, B, C, and they can finish the rest, D, E, F, G, what's 4 times 4? Whatever random question you can ask them to get them back to being present.
The question should not be related at all to whatever they talked about in the listening partnership, because as you might be able to guess, that might bring their attention back to whatever they just worked on in the listening partnership. So make sure that it's silly, light, and random, and it just sort of helps them get out of whatever they just worked on and be ready to be listening to you once you switch turns.
Yes. So before we try this, I just wanted to ask folks, what are your questions? There's a lot of information we threw out at you around the support piece of action support, but we want to try this before we get into the action piece of how we use listening in action. What are your questions? You can comment. If you have any questions, we'll take a moment, and then Marguerite will get you guys into a listening partnership.
Yep, so we'll give you a minute to type any question you might have into the chat box, and we will respond to it, and then we can start the listening partnership after that. Oh, good, we still have the same number of participants as we started, so no one jumped off the minute. How do you show confidentiality? Francis, that's a great question. You just want to make sure that it's a mutual agreement. Here in this space, it seems like we've established that no one's going to end their listening partnership and then run off to their friend and tell them about what Francis just talked about. Francis, depending on whoever you are partnered up with in this listening partnership, you can rest assured that people on this group, on this webinar, have agreed to not share anything that is personal to you. You are the only one that gets to share what you've talked about in the debrief. And so if you are trying to establish a listening partnership with someone else in your life, Francis, you would just remind them that anything we talk about in a listening partnership is confidential. And I'm sure they would want that for themselves as much as you want that for yourself. And Lawrence asked, how can you get someone into a listening partnership if you have issues of difference with them? That's a great question, Lawrence, and we get that a lot. And the first thing we say is, right now, what we're trying to do is help you build listening partnerships with people that hopefully think like you. So I think people on this webinar mostly generally think like you, not too many issues. And what you want to start thinking about is, who are the one or two people in your life, whether it's in your chapter of Indivisible or whether it's just in your life, that you feel like you could have a regular listening partnership to. It is much easier than you might think to go to someone and say, hey, I just learned this thing that I think will help. We share time, we talk about whatever we want. Won't you give it a try? And we encourage that you do that with the people that you know can and want to listen to you and that you want to listen to. Down the line, we'll talk a little bit about how do you start building this line of communication with people that you have issues of difference with. For now, let's just focus on people that we know want to listen to us and we want to listen to them. Sherry asked, when emotions run high, approaching time limit, how do you transition respectfully? That's a great question. Whether we do 3 minutes each or whether we do 30 minutes each, Esty and I encourage each other to go and pursue any emotion that we have to process. So we have sometimes had 3 minutes where we had extremely effective listening partnerships. We laughed hard, we cried hard, we screamed hard, and when the timer runs out, it's helpful to have your timer on like full volume because it signifies that the time is up. And what you've generally agreed to in a listening partnership is that when the time is up, the time is up. You can give people a few seconds to sort of wrap up if they're in the middle of something, but mostly you've agreed that that's the time you're going to share. Sometimes we say, why don't you take 5 more minutes? For this practice round, we won't do that. And then of course, Sherry, like Esty said, it's going to be really important that you just listen to them warmly and then give them grounding, just offer them silly little questions that will slowly help them come out of an emotion if it's running high. And sometimes if it's light enough, you might only need one grounding question. And sometimes if the listening partnership was particularly heavy, you may need 5 or 6 different grounding questions until the person feels like they are in a good mental state.
And have enough attention to them listen to you. Any other questions? Thumbs up if you're ready to try. And hopefully you'll get a chance to try it physically one day. And we just want to hear, how was it? How did it go for you? Was it, how was it to be a listener versus being a speaker? Things that stood out, and remember respecting confidentiality. We're not asking you necessarily to share what was part of your listening partnership, but just how it felt to even try it. Of course, keeping in mind that it was virtual, and so the effect was probably not as effective as it would be in person.
What happened to Francis? Oh.
Francis seems to be there, but I can't see. It felt good.
I'm here. My camera's not working.
Oh, great. Hi, Francis. And you all can speak if you want to.
Yeah.
But Lawrence just typed in that it felt good to him, which is great.
Can you say a little bit more, Lawrence, about why it felt good?
It's nice to be listened to without any kind of judgment or agenda.
Sweet.
Well, that speaks to something I felt as a listener, which was, I wanted to engage back and forth, but held myself back to just listen.
Yeah, you're not the only one, Lita, who feels kind of weird about it. Oh, I can't talk and respond. I just have to listen. It takes a little practice. Other reflections and thoughts?
Sorry. Whoops.
No.
We didn't actually do the exercise. We talked about what we were doing, but
I'm glad you got caught up to speed. That's great.
we do the exercise here almost on a daily basis. I've got to say, I mean, it's good, but it's
Joan,
yeah.
do you want to say a little bit about what difference it makes in the work that you're doing?
I think the best person to talk about it who's completely sold on this, because sometimes I miss just dialoguing without reflecting, is Edwin. I mean, he this is something that he does all the time. And you want to say something about it?
I guess I don't want to interrupt here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I love empathic listening. I do a lot with empathic mediation, empathy circles, like small groups with listening. So one person speaks, we'll have small groups of 4, maybe 5. One person speaks, the other reflects back what they're hearing until the speaker feels heard. Then it's the listener's turn to speak to someone in the circle, and then that person reflects back. So we go around like for hours, doing this, and it's the core of healing, really of feeling heard, developing resilience, as well as for conflict. You get people in conflict together. It takes time, but people can work out their issues. So we've done this at Indivisible Berkeley. We've done, kind of group workshops, at the meetings, as well as in Berkeley, at UC Berkeley. This Saturday, we're holding a radical empathy forum. So we have 10 candidates running for the Assembly District. They're going to be coming to this forum and be doing this empathic listening to talk about how we can create a more caring and or an empathic and caring culture. So we're very much into this process and think it's really important. So
great. We're glad you all have some kind of a process in Berkeley. And what we're offering on this webinar is just another set of tools that allow you to set up spaces and moments to be able to listen to each other. Because what we have found is that for us to be effective in listening to people that don't think like us, we've got to get a little practice in being listened to, what that feels like, and listening to other people around us. And I really love what Lauren said, because it really smoothly transitions us into the next piece of the webinar, which is, okay, so how do you then bring the skill of listening out into your communities? And specifically, how do you listen to people that don't quite think like you? What we like to call our action piece, putting it into action out in the community. Lauren said that, and if everyone could mute themselves again, just so we have minimal background noise, and we'll unmute as you, if there's more opportunity to speak. Lauren said it felt good to be listened to with no particular agenda. And I liked that a lot, because in many ways, what we at Youth on Board are trying to create are opportunities for the communities we want to engage to be listened to without a political agenda, without any particular, you're wrong, I'm right, here's what's right, your thinking is wrong. Because like Lauren says, it feels good. It actually does feel good to be listened to. And it can, in many instances, not all, but in many instances, it creates an opportunity to then be listened to. We often like to say that it's hard to listen if you haven't been listened to. And we believe that that is really important. So one way that we have put this into practice or into action, as we like to say, is with something called deep canvassing. Can I see thumbs up if you have heard of deep canvassing? Lita has. Great. Lawrence, perfect. I'm glad to hear that people know about deep canvassing. Deep canvassing is, for us, essentially door-to-door engagement that is about a two-way conversation and not just a one-way pitch. And it's about engaging people around real experiences that they have had and that you have had that shape the way you think and the ideas that you hold. Deep canvassing is most effective in reaching individuals who have different views from us. And it is most effective in unrooting deep biases in our communities. Deep canvassing is, as you might imagine, a modification of traditional canvassing. Thumbs up if you've ever done good old traditional canvassing in your neighborhoods for a candidate or for a cause. Great. Deep canvassing was developed by an organizer and community leader named Dave Flesher and his team at the Leadership Lab out of the Los Angeles LGBT Center. And what they set out to do was to develop a model that would allow for deeper connections at the door, which they guessed could mean more significant and more effective shifting of opinions. There's a few differences between traditional canvassing and deep canvassing, and we want to walk you through them because they're really important. Then we'll get a little bit into how do you actually practice listening and effective dialogue in a deep canvassing. When you do traditional canvassing, typically you will have a narrow and singular goal, meaning you are out there to canvass for a particular candidate or you are out there to canvass for a particular issue. And so your goal is to get as many people that you talk to at the door to vote one way or another. To do that, you want to hit as many doors as possible, which means that you do not want to spend too much time at the door. The average conversation, if you even get one, at the door with traditional canvassing is maybe 2 to 5 minutes, 5 minutes at the most long. And we and usually the trainings are very short. 15 to 20 minutes to go over the script, answer a few questions, maybe get a practice round, and there you go. And as you might guess, because of that, traditional canvassing is typically about quantity over quality. If you've ever been part of a door knocking campaign, you'll understand the importance placed on how many doors did you knock, how many conversations did you have. Not exactly about how deep was the conversation, what did they talk about, what were their opinions. Deep canvassing, on the other hand, is focused on actually creating a genuine two-way dialogue. We're interested in not just hearing from people at the door, but we're also wanting to share our thinking in an honest but effective way. Because of that, conversations in a deep canvas are much longer. The average conversation in a successful deep canvas is 10 to 15 minutes long, sometimes even longer. Because it's a much deeper conversation, the training is much more intense, usually 75 to 90 minutes long. Why, you might ask? Well, the first thing is we are creating the script together. The script creation is a much longer process because the script, unlike in the traditional canvas, is not so much a script, but a guide for yourself, a guide for how you want to talk to people, and a guide for the kinds of experiences you want to share. And because of that, Deep Canvas places much more emphasis on quality over quantity. So in a traditional Deep Canvas, you're going to probably hit and have 8 to 10 conversations, right? And for anyone who's been in a political campaign, that might be scary, but the benefits of that is that you get much more effective conversations that help people shift more. In a deep canvas, it can get difficult to hold on to the perspectives that we shared earlier on this webinar. All people are good, all people get hurt, all people can heal. And so we've developed a really effective and simple method of communicating with people that allows them to trust you, allows them to listen to you, and allows them to understand your perspective, even though they don't agree. And we start with affirm. You'll see a smiley face next to affirm. We'd like to start conversations at the door, understanding that people want to be heard, and that they feel good when they're validated. So in a deep canvas conversation, anything that you can affirm as valid or true is important to do that. Does that mean that you're lying about what they're saying and saying that you agree with them? No. Does that mean that you are lying about what you think or lying about details of your life? No. What it means is, can you acknowledge in the conversation that something they're saying or a feeling that they're having is valid and legitimate? This is often hard to do, but we find that it's really important. If you've ever had a conversation with someone and they never bothered to affirm anything you said, do you think that you're going to want to listen to them and change your perspective? Probably not. So we like to start with affirming someone. We then like to bridge, and this is really simple. It simply means that when it's time to share your perspective, you don't want to invalidate what they've just said. How many of you have ever been in a conversation where someone says, well, I understand what you're saying, but, right? Well, I understand that, but, anything that came before the but is probably a lie. And so we have to be more effective in the way we bridge from listening to what they have to say to being able to share what you're saying. Phrases like, I completely hear you, and here's what I think. Even something as simple as that can help change the tone from confrontational to, I want to add on to what you're saying. Would you like to listen to my perspective? There's other ways to bridge, but the simple point is that you want to actually create a bridge between what the person is saying and thinking and what you're saying and thinking. And connect is probably the most important ingredient in this conversation. You are going to want to be honest and share with the person at the door why this issue, whatever you're canvassing on, matters to you. And you want to share it in a way that's compelling. Oftentimes in a canvas or in a debate, we like to throw around numbers and data, right? Data and numbers for us are very safe. Well, the numbers show that this is true, and so that you must believe the numbers. The problem with data is that anyone can pull out data, and numbers can be interpreted in many different ways. So data is usually not that useful. We like to encourage people we train deep canvassing on to share personal, whether they're direct or indirect experiences with the issue at hand. Take for a quick example, Dave Flesher from the LGBT Center went to Florida and trained an organization to canvass on transgender rights in a deep red district. He had all canvassers, whether they were transgender themselves or not transgender, come up with 3 different direct or indirect experiences they have had with discrimination. For trans people in the canvas, they were able to very directly talk about their experience with facing discrimination as transgender people. For allies in the canvas, they were able to draw indirect experiences to discrimination, period. I think everyone on this call at one point in your life has felt discriminated against, treated unfairly, treated less than. We can draw from those indirect experiences to try to communicate our values and what we think to the people that are listening to us. So if you're ever at the door, or you're ever in a fight with your partner, or you're ever struggling to communicate with someone, you can remember the ABCs, and they are a sure path to helping you get out of a rut and come to some kind of understanding. Affirm, bridge, and connect. I'm seeing, okay, great. Sherry had to leave, but we will connect with her. Thank you, Sherry.
Please remember to mute yourself. All right. So we're going to try some deep canvassing. So Carlos and I, what we often do in our in-person training is we model what deep canvassing looks like, a conversation. I am the person at the door I'm the owner of the house that he's knocked on, and he is the deep canvasser. And we have a couple scenarios that we wanted to poll you guys on as to like what conversation you want to see at the door, where Carlos gets to practice the ABC, and you get to take in where he's affirming, bridging, and connecting to me as the person at the door.
Great. So you don't have to try deep canvassing right now. You are off the hook. We, on the other hand, are going to play out a small scenario as the canvasser and Esty as the person at the door. Do we have the poll, Marguerite? We want to have you all decide what topic I'm going to canvass Esty on. So you have 30 seconds to decide.
So your topics are defending DACA, gun control, reporting sexual assault on campus, housing affordability, and gentrification. All right, do we have the results?
Okay, and the result, not surprisingly, is gun control. This is our favorite topic to canvass on as well. So, gun control. Let's see. I am canvassing Esty's community, and as we all know, Parkland just happened. Esty is actually a resident of a nearby community in Florida, and I am someone who deeply, deeply believes in gun control. Esty, on the other hand, well, you'll see when we start the canvas. So I am canvassing to see how people are feeling about what just happened, and I deeply believe that we need to act on gun control. Let's ban let's ban anyone from owning an automatic assault weapon. Okay.
Hello?
Hi, is Esty Met home?
This is she. Who are you?
Hi, Mrs. Met. I'm Carlos. I am from a nearby community. We're coming around the neighborhood today to talk to people about gun violence. Do you have a second to talk?
Start talking.
Hi, I'm Carlos. We are canvassing the neighborhood today because we want to hear what you have to say about what's been happening around gun violence and access to guns. And we have a particular question, and we want you to rate yourself on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 meaning you don't support this at all, 10 meaning you are totally in support of this. Would you support a national ban on automatic assault weapons?
No, I would not support a ban.
Okay, so from 0, meaning you don't support it at all, 10, you completely support it, where would you rate yourself?
4.
A 4. Would you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, you know what just happened with Parkland, right?
Yeah, 17 young people died because of guns.
Well, I'm a teacher.
Okay.
And
Great.
I hear there's a lot of conversations around whether or not we should arm teachers.
Yes.
You know, and I agree that we should.
You agree that we should arm teachers?
I'm a teacher, and I agree that we should.
And why do you think that would help the problem?
I have a classroom with a lot of rowdy kids, and I grew up in a house where I had a parent who put the belt out just as a warning that we should act right. And so I feel like it's the same thing in the classroom. If my kids just knew that there was a gun there that I could pull out just to get them in line, I'd keep it there. Never would use it just as a means to keep them in line so I could teach all kids effectively, rather than the few who are trying to act wild and I can't focus on those who want to be there.
So you have a lot of rowdy kids in the classroom.
I do have a lot of rowdy kids in the classroom, and I'm tired of them.
Sounds like you have a rough job.
I do have a rough job.
Sounds like it's tough.
Yes.
And how many students do you have in your classroom, may I ask?
35.
35 students.
Yeah.
That's a lot of students.
A lot of students.
And if anyone acts up, like, can they go to like a guidance counselor or school psychologists or anyone that they can talk to? I just recently graduated from high school a couple of years ago, and I remember that a lot of the times why some of my friends were acting out in class was because they were going through things, right? Their parents were divorcing. They had parents at home that were super strict. And I just remember that I had one teacher in the school that I could talk to, and that made all the difference. I wonder if the students in your school have a place that they can talk about what they're going through.
That's not my problem.
And so are there psychologists or counselors in the school?
There are very few, but it's not my problem.
Okay.
I'm there to teach the kids that want to be taught. And so if that means that people get access to guns, they can get access to guns. I don't think we should limit anybody. Guns have been a legacy in my family since the Civil War.
Oh, you have a lot. Do you own guns yourself?
Myself.
Oh, how many guns do you own?
I'm waiting to bring them in the classroom.
Okay. Well, I have to admit, I don't agree with that at all. And I like I said, I was just a student in the classroom, and I was pretty well behaved. But I think that if I saw a gun on my teacher's desk, like I would not feel safe at all in that classroom, because what if I do something to upset the teacher? How would I know that they're not going to use that gun against me?
That's a valid point.
And I would much rather focus on the fact that you have 35 students in your classroom, which is way too many students. And did your school just go through budget cuts? I mean, is there a reason why you have 35 students in your classroom?
Yeah, it's in the contract. That's the cap.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I really think that this conversation can't just be about guns.
Mm-hmm.
I actually do support the right of people owning guns. I don't think that we should completely take the right of guns away from people. I think they're important to folks just like you. But I also think that this conversation is bigger than about guns, right? I think it's a conversation about why aren't young people getting the support they need in their home and in the classroom, right? Like Nicholas Cruz was giving us all kinds of red flags, and no one tried to do anything to stop him. What do you think about that?
That's true.
I'm Carlos, and I work with an organization called Youth on Board. What we're trying to focus on right now is, we do support an assault weapons ban. I don't think that. I don't know if would you want an assault weapon in your classroom, like a semi-automatic rifle?
No, just a small handgun. I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't think that anyone should have these gigantic automatic weapons. But I think also part of where you and I might agree is, young people need more support than they're getting today. And I think if young people had more support, then maybe all of these shootings wouldn't be happening. What do you think about that?
It might be true.
Well, I'm really glad you stopped and had the chance to talk with me. I'm just going to ask you the question one more time, and you give me a number back. 0, you don't support it at all. 10, you're in complete support. Where would you rate yourself, 0 to 10, on supporting an automatic assault weapons ban?
I do think people still should own guns, but you have me at a 6.
Okay. Great. Well, Mrs. Met, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I really appreciate that people like you are talking to people like me. And next week, actually, down at the high school, we are having a forum on guns, and I think your perspective is as important as any other. So if you'd like to come, here's a flyer, and I hope to see you there.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, so that was our best attempt at improvising what a scenario could look like, using some of the tools of deep canvassing, affirming, bridging, and connecting. So can someone type in the chat, or actually let's talk to each other since it's a small enough webinar. Can someone tell me or us what is one way that can someone tell us one way that I tried to affirm Esty?
The difficulty that she has with students behaving.
Yeah.
You said she has so many students that it's really difficult.
Right, I did not agree much with her, but what I could agree with is that having 35 students in your classroom, some of whom are rowdy, must be a difficult job for a teacher. Yep. Is there any other way that I might have tried to affirm Esty?
Well, you said you were recently a student.
Yep. I was creating like a connection.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Yep. Awesome.
And also, when you talked about her family's connection to guns because of since the Civil War, so you acknowledge that there was a family connection.
Yeah, I didn't say, wow, that's really scary, and I don't identify with that at all because I'm undocumented, not from this country, and that's totally alien to me. Even though I could have, I said, I acknowledge that there's people who love guns, and that must be important. That's great. And how did I try to connect? Any other ways that I might have tried to connect and sort of share my perspective or experience?
Well, you did talk about what you as a student were able to go and talk to someone about your troubles, and was that a possibility in her school?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, one of the ways I tried to do that was I tried to actually see what she thought about this other alternative, right? Social emotional support for students in the classroom. And in that way, I was able to build some common ground. I was able to connect to Esty because I could tell that maybe she would agree on this issue. The intricacy with deep canvassing is that it's an experiment. David Flesher and his team came up with thousands of different versions of the script with little different questions, and they went out and canvassed and tried different things until things worked, things clicked. They were able to figure out that there's not one formula for how to engage someone, but the formula of affirming, of bridging, and of connecting using direct and indirect personal experience is one of the most effective ways to speak to someone at the door. So we hope that you enjoyed that demo of deep canvassing. And another hope that we have, and sort of brings us to the end of the webinar, is that you will get excited enough about this model, whether it's the support practices. We gave you 1 out of 3 support tools that we have in our toolbox. We gave you 1 out of 3 action tactics we have in our toolbox, all of which center around listening and healing and connection. And we hope that you get excited enough about this to want some of this for yourself and to want some of this for your Indivisible chapter and for Indivisible as a whole. And so we invite you to contact us and engage us in different things that you are doing. We want to hear about what you're doing, and we want to share with you ways that you can stay involved with us, whether it's in a future webinar or potentially working with us to bring this tool back to your chapters. You can see in the links that you can reach us on the internet at the Youth on Board website, youthonboard.org/listeningworks. You can find us on Twitter at Youth on Board. You can also find us on Facebook and give us a like, facebook.com/listeningworks YOB. And lastly, the most direct way to communicate with us is through email. So you'll see Esty Nola's email and my email on there. It's just our first names at youthonboard.org. We want to hear from you. We want to learn about what you're doing. And we want to be able to share as many materials as we have as possible if you're interested in implementing any of the tools that we offer in our model. I will say that in May, we will be offering a national webinar that we are co-sponsoring with a couple of other organizations. And we hope that if you want to learn and dive deeper into this model, that you join us. And we'll work with Marguerite as well to figure out other opportunities that we can create for you all to have access to this model and these tools. And before we close, I think we have time for maybe a few more minutes of question and answer. So for anyone that's still on, if you have any questions, let us know.
I think you could just say them out loud.
Yep. Okay, we just got a follow. Some of you are, oh, that's Marguerite, yes. Marguerite is fast. So if you have any questions, this would be a great time to ask them.
Well, I don't have a question. I have a comment, which is, I think you guys are fantastic. You're really effective, and we really need this and really appreciate your doing it. And it so happens that this Sunday I'm involved in doing a training for deep canvassing, but we just barely learned about deep canvassing. So, and I didn't know that's exactly what you were going to be doing here. This is perfect for us. And this is what the 2 candidates I'm working with, exactly what they want to do.
That's great.
So I just want you to know you're reaching a lot more people than you just see on this particular.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, Lita, we'd love to be in touch with you. Let us know how that training goes and if you learn anything that you here on the webinar. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay.
These are some tools I'm going to be bringing back to, we're run by a group instead of, we don't have a hierarchy, so I'll be bringing them back to the leadership group. And then we're moving forward, some members will be doing phone banking and canvassing.
Great.
So I think some of these tools, will roll out, into our general membership as we move forward with those actions. So thank you very much. Really like the presentation.
That's great, Frances. I love that. We encourage you to try setting up listening partnerships before your phone canvas. See what it's like for people to get a chance to talk with each other about how they're feeling before they have to engage folks on the phone, and then run them through the ABCs, Affirm, Bridge, and Connect. See if any of them can implement it right then and there on the phones, and ask them after the fact if it made a difference. We'd love to hear we'd love to hear how that goes.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
All right. And with that,
we are done.
Yeah,
thank you all so much.
Oh, thank you. Just very impressive.
So again, we'll leave the screen up there. I know that Marguerite this webinar was recorded, so hopefully there's a way to share it. And please write down our email addresses and get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you all.
Right.
All right. Have a lovely night.
You too.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.